August 18th began not with policy briefings or committee hearings, but with a microphone capturing the rawest fracture yet between Nancy Mace and Jasmine Crockett. What had been whispered for days, that Mace, behind closed doors, referred to Jasmine as an idiot in a burst of frustration, was suddenly thrust into daylight when a reporter pressed Mace directly. Instead of denying, she smirked, shrugged, and muttered that some people just don't belong in the room. Cameras caught it. Microphones preserved it. And within minutes, the remark sprinted across every feed. What might have been dismissed as gossip was now fact, and the fallout was instant. Morning anchors dissected tone, motive, and fallout, while clips of Jasmine listening stone-faced to the remark ran on repeat. Commentators debated whether Mace had slipped or staged it, but none could deny the bluntness, one Congresswoman calling another an idiot in public. On Capitol Hill, aides scrambled. Some urged Mace to apologize quickly, others insisted doubling down would play better with her base. Jasmine, by contrast, kept her posture measured, but her silence was sharper than any rebuttal. By mid-morning, hashtags bloomed. #, Mace meltdown. #, stand with Jasmine. #, idiocy in power. Local radio callers raged, wondering aloud how leadership could tolerate such disrespect. Even voters who normally ignored political theater paid attention. One woman in Atlanta told a reporter, "I don't care what party you are. If you call your colleague an idiot on camera, you don't belong in office." As the hours passed, the insult mutated into a symbol. Less about personalities and more about the corrosion of discourse itself. Constituents flooded inboxes demanding accountability, while protest organizers seized the moment to mobilize. Placards already promised to carry the quote into weekend rallies. What began as a single word had grown into a storm cloud hovering over Mace's career, and the question was no longer whether Jasmine would respond, but how, and how soon. By the afternoon of August 18th, the insult had already transformed from a fleeting remark into the defining headline of the day. Television networks rolled continuous loops of Mace's smirk, while digital outlets framed the story with banners reading, "Congresswoman calls colleague an idiot." The choice of word, so naked, so devoid of parliamentary polish, carried weight beyond the insult itself. Editorial boards rushed out midday columns, some condemning the lack of civility, others marveling at how a single phrase could reshape the narrative of an entire session. Jasmine Crockett, though silent in public, became the focal point of pundit panels. Analysts speculated on her potential response: a fiery floor speech, a press conference drenched in righteous anger, or perhaps a strategic silence designed to let Mace twist under scrutiny. Each option carried risks, yet Jasmine's refusal to answer immediately was interpreted as a calculated move. Meanwhile, Mace's office released a terse statement insisting that the Congresswoman was merely expressing frustration at political grandstanding and that she respected her colleagues. The words rang hollow, especially when replayed against the original footage where disdain was visible in her expression. Protesters outside district offices picked up on the gap between denial and reality, waving signs that read, "We saw the tape." Hashtags sharpened further. # Mace lies, # Idiot Gate, # Respect Congress. At town halls, constituents demanded answers, forcing local party leaders into awkward defenses. Political rivals from both parties seized the moment to issue press releases, calling the incident proof of deeper dysfunction. What began as a feud between two women was rapidly mutating into a referendum on leadership, character, and the very image of Congress. And still, Jasmine remained silent, letting the weight of anticipation grow heavier with every passing hour. By early evening on August 18th, the Capitol had shifted into a pressure cooker, every hallway buzzing with reporters chasing quotes and lawmakers ducking into elevators. Yet the focus remained squarely on the two names that dominated headlines: Nancy Mace and Jasmine Crockett. The insult, simple as it was, had broken the fragile surface of collegiality, and now the nation demanded to see how Jasmine would strike back. She finally emerged before cameras, not with fire in her eyes, but with the kind of icy calm that can only come from knowing the weight of the spotlight. She spoke slowly, deliberately, making every pause sting as much as the words themselves. "This is not about me being called an idiot," she began. "This is about the people who sent me here being told, through disrespect, that their voices don't matter." The framing shifted instantly. No longer was the fight between two lawmakers. It became a struggle over dignity for constituents across the nation. Anchors interrupted programming to run her statement live. Audiences at home leaned forward, sensing history crystallizing in real time. For supporters, her restraint looked like strength. For detractors, it was a shrewd play to seize the moral high ground. On social platforms, clips of her remarks gathered millions of views within an hour. Comment sections flooded with praise. "Finally, someone stands tall," wrote one user. Another added, "She turned an insult into a lesson in respect." Meanwhile, Mace's defenders tried to pivot, claiming the controversy was manufactured outrage, but their voices were drowned beneath the tidal wave of sympathy Jasmine had cultivated. Pundits declared the confrontation a turning point, with some going so far as to call it the moment Jasmine ascended from rising figure to national symbol. The insult was still there, echoing, but it now sounded less like an attack and more like a badge of resilience. What had begun as humiliation had been inverted into power. The night of August 18th brought no calm. Instead, the feud between Jasmine Crockett and Nancy Mace escalated into a spectacle that gripped both traditional and digital media. On cable news, split screens showed commentators dissecting every gesture, every syllable of Jasmine's measured remarks. Conservative hosts tried to frame Mace as a victim of political overreaction, while progressive panels hailed Jasmine as the voice of composure in a chamber starved for dignity. Hashtags continued to swell, but now the debate took a new form. Was Jasmine too restrained? Some activists argued that she should have unleashed anger rather than poise, warning that calm responses risked normalizing blatant disrespect. Yet others insisted her composure was precisely the kind of leadership missing from Washington. The divide itself became news, headlines asking strength or silence, while social feeds burned with dueling memes. In one viral clip, Jasmine's calm stare was captioned, "Not your idiot." In another, Mace's smirk was plastered with the phrase, "Caught on tape." Late-night comedians joined the chorus, amplifying the feud with jokes that reached millions. What might have been a two-day story ballooned into a cultural flashpoint, with pundits calling it a referendum on political discourse itself. Inside the Capitol, lawmakers grew uneasy. Some feared the spectacle would derail legislative priorities, while others quietly admitted Jasmine had reframed the game in her favor. In her silence, she allowed Mace's insult to ferment into scandal, each hour multiplying its weight. By the end of the night, analysts weren't asking whether Jasmine would respond again. They were asking when and how forcefully. Her silence had become a weapon, sharp as any speech, leaving Nancy Mace in the peculiar position of being both aggressor and embattled. Across the country, viewers waited, sensing that the next move would decide not only reputations, but the trajectory of the debate on civility itself. By the morning of August 19th, the clash had matured into something larger than two lawmakers trading barbs. It had become a cultural mirror. Coffee shops, morning talk shows, and even classrooms buzzed with references to the insult. Some saw it as proof that politics had devolved into schoolyard behavior, while others framed Jasmine's handling as a model for resilience. Reporters camped outside her office, and every flicker of expression as she walked past became headline material. Meanwhile, Nancy Mace seemed caught in a paradox. The more she tried to downplay her words, the more oxygen she gave the controversy. In one brief interview, when asked if she regretted the insult, she shrugged, a gesture that instantly went viral, adding fuel to the storm. Jasmine, on the other hand, carefully chose her moments. She released a short statement online, reiterating that her focus remained on policy and respect for constituents. That post, barely 2 paragraphs, attracted millions of likes within hours, a digital rallying point for those who felt exhausted by political pettiness. Editorial boards began weighing in, some praising Jasmine's poise, while others questioned whether her approach was calculated political theater. The irony, of course, was that every such critique only amplified her visibility. By midday, analysts on financial networks were even speculating whether this newfound prominence could translate into campaign donations and future influence. What started as a single insult had rippled into markets of attention, credibility, and power. Nancy Mace had meant to wound, but instead she had given her rival a megaphone, and Jasmine wielded it not with shouting, but with silence punctuated by carefully aimed words, transforming insult into opportunity and pettiness into national narrative. By late afternoon on August 19th, the spectacle reached its next stage. Cable networks carried split-screen debates with political strategists sparring over what Jasmine's calm meant for the broader fight against incivility. Commentators noted that while insults were nothing new in Congress, rarely had they been so starkly exposed, and rarely had the victim turned the moment into a platform. On social media, Jasmine's name trended globally, not just in the U.S., signaling that the confrontation had struck a nerve far beyond Washington. International outlets picked up the story, framing it as an emblem of America's internal divisions. Nancy Mace, facing mounting pressure, attempted to pivot by emphasizing her legislative record. Yet every policy speech she delivered was drowned out by viral clips of her insult, replayed endlessly with mocking captions. Jasmine, meanwhile, scheduled a town hall. In it, she acknowledged the insult directly, telling supporters that words mattered because they revealed respect, or lack thereof, for the people represented. Her line, "If she can call me an idiot, what does she call you when no one's listening?" was instantly clipped and shared, becoming one of the defining moments of the week. Analysts compared the clash to previous political flashpoints that reshaped careers, arguing that Jasmine had seized a national spotlight few freshman lawmakers ever touched. Her rise, they noted, was not in policy detail, but in embodying a cultural thirst for dignity. The drama now was no longer about who insulted whom. It was about who spoke for a public tired of politics as mockery. By the end of the day, Jasmine had positioned herself as that voice, leaving Nancy Mace cornered by her own words and struggling to reclaim control of the narrative. By the evening of August 19th, the drama between Jasmine and Nancy Mace had fully cemented itself as more than a fleeting headline. It was a symbol. Commentators reflected on how a single word, flung casually in a heated moment, could ricochet into a national referendum on respect, leadership, and the image of Congress itself. Jasmine, closing out her day, took the stage at a community center where hundreds had gathered not to talk policy, but to share solidarity. Cameras flashed as she reminded the audience that leadership was not about insults, but about integrity, not about tearing down, but about building trust. Her words resonated in the hall, drawing repeated applause. Meanwhile, Nancy Mace faced a darker evening. Editorials painted her as reckless, late-night hosts turned her insult into punchlines, and donors reportedly began questioning her judgment. The political fallout was not measured in legislation passed, but in credibility lost. For Jasmine, the trajectory was different. Her poise was translated into national recognition. She was invited onto primetime programs, asked to weigh in on civility and accountability. Some critics muttered that she was exploiting the moment, but most viewers saw something else, a politician who could take a blow and transform it into momentum. By night's end, social media feeds were filled with montages of her responses, spliced against Nancy's shrug, a contrast that needed no narration. The conclusion was clear. One woman had risen above, the other had stumbled into her own trap. What began as a single insult ended as a reshaping of political narratives, with Jasmine claiming the last word, not through rage, but through resilience. For many, it was a preview of a career still unfolding, and a reminder that in politics, the loudest insult is rarely as powerful as the quietest strength.